became a very good friend. We played golf a lot together, and we were playing one day, and Zola loved golf. And since he's gone on now, I can say what I want because he's not around. But he was in a bunker on every hole, and he wasn't very good out of the sand. So we got to the 8th hole. There's one little tiny bunker by the green, and he's in the bunker again. I went up to him, pretty deep bunker. I stood up against him, so I'm pretty tall. I was about 15 feet above him. I looked at him. I said, Zola, you know I love you, man. And I haven't had you on the clock today, but I'm pretty sure you spent more time in the sand than your forefathers did getting from Egypt to the Promised Land. So that's good golf when you can lovingly insult your playing partner. So today I'm going to talk about Messiah's first coming. Let me just kind of give you a little bit of an overview, make a few comments about a few things. So Pam and I were going down to the glacier 2 days ago, and we saw this. Now, I don't know if this is significant or not. I posted on my Facebook page, and people said, oh, did it have blue eyes? Yeah, like I'm going to walk up to a buffalo and get it close enough to see what the eyes are. Just a couple comments. So Pam and I decided, since I'm semi-retired, we would drive. We would see the West, and we're going to head on out to probably Vancouver after we leave here and then come back across the U.S., and it's great because this is like, we did this a couple of years ago, and it's like the most time we've spent together in almost 48 years of marriage, and it's really pretty good. Now, I will make a couple comments that we entered Canada at Sault Ste. Marie, drove around Lake Superior, Thunder Bay, Winnipeg, all the way. So we have spent like 1,500 miles, and I'm going to use U.S. measurements, by the way. 1,500 miles on the Trans-Canada Highway. And even though we spent all that time on the Trans-Canada Highway, I can assure you that Pam and I both continue to identify with the sex which we were assigned at birth. The other thing I noticed, too, is that everywhere we go in Canada, I have to do conversions. Not gospel conversions, but kilometers to miles or vice versa, Canadian dollars to U.S. dollars, on and on. And I was told when I came here today that I had 45 minutes. So I did the conversion on that, and 45 minutes Canadian converts to, I think, 68 minutes U.S. So I just don't want anybody to get disappointed about that. The theme of the conference, the verse that they gave us to kind of start us off, came from Psalm chapter 90. Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting you are God. You turn man to destruction and say, return, O children of men. For 1,000 years in your sight are like yesterday when it is past, and like a watch in the night. I thought, by the way, Chris Catalka, I was disappointed he wasn't here in person. I met him at the Christian Media Summit in December in Israel and Jerusalem. In fact, I'm pretty sure we were walking around the city of David together. And I will say that talk was fantastic. He picked up all of the major themes because in the Jewish mind, and the scriptures are Jewish, prophecy is pattern. And did you see how he picked the pattern out? The exit of the Shekinah glory from Jerusalem over the eastern wall, down across the Kidron Valley to the Mount of Olives, and then how it returned in the person of Jesus Christ, and then how it left again. And I know there are some talks, and it appears there's going to be some overlap. So I'm going to speak at Parkland Grace Fellowship on Sunday, and I'm going to part of my talk is going to be about Ezekiel chapter 8 and 9. And I don't think it hurts that it gets repeated. I have a little bit of a different spin on it because it's a very important prophetic passage because of the pattern, the pattern that it shows, and it's applicable, I believe, to the church at the end of the age. What happened in the fall of Jerusalem and the kingdom of Judah under the Babylonians and the apostasy that was going on at that time is a pattern what we will see the church at the end of the age. And do we see that? We sure do. The other thing, and so I talk a lot about, if you watch my prophecy updates, I have a grid that I always talk about every week because it's sort of how I process all of the information. And the theme that I'm going to try to carry through my talks today will be, today and tomorrow, and even on Sunday, will be this. We live at an incredibly significant time. So the talk today is going to be about the first coming of Messiah. But as we go through it, and if I fail to make the connection, understand the pattern that we're trying to look at and what we are trying to see is that the expectation that was attendant around the time, at the time of Jesus' first coming, will be the expectation that will be attendant around the time of the second coming of Jesus. An example of this is the life of the Messiah when he was here. There were many, many prophecies about the first coming of Jesus. Those prophecies were fulfilled. Remember, we always talk about this 400 years of silence between the Old and New Testaments. The implication is, or the way that some people look at it, like nothing happened. No, everything happened. Everything that was important that needed to happen for Jesus to come the first time. Because Daniel, I'll talk about this in another talk, but Daniel is sitting there in Daniel chapter 9 reading Jeremiah. And you know, if he knew Jeremiah, he knew Isaiah. And he knew the Torah, and he knew the other books of the Hebrew Bible. And he's reading Jeremiah, and he's like, 70 years is the captivity for our sin. Now we come, but what did he do? Did he say, hey, travel agent, I need a ticket back. I'm going home. I'm leaving. He got down and led the nation in repentance. It's a pattern that we should follow. And the Lord, the angel came to him and said, Daniel, it's not 70 years. It's 77s. And so those 77s, though, it was clear. It was clear to guys who lived in the east, probably in Babylon, the area of Babylon, that those times were coming to an end. At least 69 of those sevens. So if those times were coming to an end, they were looking at the skies, looking for the expectation of the coming of the Messiah the first time. And so those prophecies related to his first coming started to be fulfilled. They were fulfilled precisely, but there was a pattern to their fulfillment. In fact, if you look at the timeline of the life of Messiah, what you will find is that up until the last week of Jesus' life, about 40% of the first coming prophecies were fulfilled. Actually, it's like 40.05%, something like that. But that means that in the last week, that last little short period of time, 60% of the prophecies are fulfilled. So, if prophecy is pattern, what should we expect? We should expect that there is a time frame that the Lord has laid out, and that's probably talk 3 tomorrow. And it's probably going to overlap with some of the things that some of the other pastors and teachers are going to say here. But understand, I hope they overlap. I hope there's complete symmetry of agreement. I often say, I have taught a lot about apostasy and false teaching in the church. One of the things that I've learned is that you see the research when you read it. It says, oh, well, and I think this research is nonsense, personally, that there are 35,000 Christian denominations. And I think it's in the thousands, single-digit thousands. There's a lot, probably more than there should be, unless you are talking about eschatology. Then there are about 85,000 denominations because there's a lot of disagreement. And that's why I use this verse from Daniel all the time, where it talks about, Daniel wanted to know, when is this going to happen? He told Daniel, it's not for you. Seal up the book until the time of the end. And at the time of the end, men will run to and fro. And I believe that has a double meaning. It means they run to and fro, just traveling and moving around like crazy. Oh, by the way, the WHO today announced that it's over. Did you hear that? So, and the director of the U.S. Center for Disease Control resigned today. Now, Rachel Walensky, I think is her name, or something like that. But my fear is that it's sort of like the casting out of the demon, that you cast out one demon and 7 take its place. So I'm afraid that that's the pattern that may be visited upon the U.S. in the coming days and weeks. But Daniel so there's this, men are running to and fro, but I believe it means that the deeper meaning is they're going back and forth through the book, looking at the prophecies, examining the prophecies about the second coming of Jesus, comparing them to the pattern of the first coming. And Daniel says, the wise will understand and instruct. And in Daniel 11, it says, instruct many. So the question is, what do we want? The practical application is, what do we want to be? Do we want to be one of the wise men that can instruct others as we see these things unfolding? And I will confess to you, I do a lot on current events, newspapers. If you've watched my prophecy updates, you know that. And people criticize that. Oh, you're just doing newspaper exegesis. Well, let me tell you something, bud. The prophecies about the second coming of the Messiah are going to unfold in a real world that exists. Just like the prophecies of the first coming existed in a real world, a world that had seen the empires come, just as Daniel had prophesied, had seen a precursor to the abomination of desolation, which Jesus himself referenced, which you can take from that. Jesus believed Daniel wrote Daniel. Okay, I'm taking him at his word. We also see that there was this event with the Maccabees. And go read the book of 1st and 2nd Maccabees and compare it to the pattern, to what's going on today in the world and in Israel. It's shocking that the history of that time. So they weren't 400 silent years. You know that. We all know that. They were very significant years because during that period of time, God was preparing the entire nation for the coming of the Messiah. And by and large, they missed it. We have no excuse to not be ready for the Lord coming again. I have worked long and hard. I'm a lawyer. I'm a trial lawyer. And what trial lawyers try to do, what we try to do is to give a jury a concept, something visual that they can latch onto and understand a difficult concept. I had a very complex white-collar criminal trial, civil fraud, wire fraud, securities fraud, all kinds of things thrown in there. The government throws everything against the wall, by the way, when they're going after your client. And we weren't successful, but there was a certain mystery as to how these financial transactions took place. And I spent 2 years working with graphic artists and that type of thing, trying to figure out how to present this. So I've been working on this one. I just finished it while I was sitting back there during Carl's talk. And so I put it the first time, I'm revealing this first time. How is this going to unfold? And so I talk about this. I talk about acceleration, convergence, logistics, and understanding. Things are going to happen quickly. Question. Do you think things are happening pretty quickly right now? Those of us who do prophecy updates, I talk to Tom Hughes, Brianna Holthouse, other guys Pablo at Serpents and Doves. And every time we get together, it's like, I can't keep up. So pray about it. I'm trying to figure out a way to put together sort of a symposium, think tank type thing for people who are trying to keep people informed. And the other thing, too, is it doesn't help any of us when people kind of go off the rails, and I've discovered it all on my own, and I'm the only one. I believe the principle out of the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. And so you're gonna see a lot of it over the next week with the crowning of King Charles. There's a book that Tim Cohen wrote. It's a pretty good book. I've seen him interviewed. He makes a compelling case that Prince Charles, King Charles, now King Charles as of today or tomorrow, is the Antichrist. So I always put things in baskets of possibilities. But the other thing that I look at is is how this acceleration thing works. For example, with the first 4 seals, which I think are clearly related. Many guys, I think Andy Woods, Randall Price, Arthur Fruchtenbaum, all these guys, they relate the birth pangs to the first 4 seals. I think that's a pretty clear connection. And you got a lot of smart people giving their opinion on that. And they are in agreement. But how does it happen? And I think the tendency has been, as I studied this, is the first seal happens, the white horse goes out, does everything he's supposed to do, then the second seal. And then he does everything that he's supposed to do, then third and fourth seal. I don't buy that. I don't believe that anymore. I believe that when each of these seals are open, the rider and the effects of the rider increase over time. At times they will increase exponentially. We have this concept of exponential increase, and it relates to acceleration. You have incremental change and you have exponential change. Exponential change can be like the way the balance on your credit card increases when you want to buy some stuff. That's exponential, not incremental. There's a guy, I'll talk about him in my talk tonight a little bit, Sam Altman, who founded OpenAI. He's 37 years old, smart guy, very wealthy, and he wrote an article last year called Moore's Law of Everything. Moore, who just passed away, had a rule that chip technology would double every 2 years. That's an exponential increase because the double then doubles, then it doubles, it's doubled, it's now doubled. And it goes up very quickly. And you can see that in the world with I went to a seminar in San Francisco a few years ago, my last trip to San Francisco. In my life, that was 2019. What a cesspool. Unbelievable. Do you know that when I was looking up a hotel to stay in, I came across a poop map for the sidewalks of San Francisco. Poop and needle map. So you could decide where to stay at your hotel. I used to go there a lot, so I will never go there again. And the real estate market there is collapsing. I don't know what it's doing here. I know your city's grown tremendously over the last 10 years. But I have done a lot of litigation in commercial banking, high-end commercial foreclosures. I feel fairly confident in telling you that the world is, I believe, on the verge, the cusp of the worst financial crisis in world history. We are going to see shocking things this year. We are going to see famine this year. Now the question will be then, so are the horses riding? I don't know. Let's keep an open mind on it and talk about it. And I know that a lot of prophecy teachers who are committed premillennial and all this stuff, they are wrestling with these ideas because of what we see going on. And I hear people say all the time, I never thought I'd see this before we were out of here. Well, so look, now we know you have seen it before you're out of here, and I don't know how much we see. I don't have that knowledge. But I do know that there are things coming, like persecution of the church, particularly in the West. I will talk tonight. My second talk will be about things leading up to the second coming of Christ. I have 45 minutes. My intro now has gone to, well, wait, the intro doesn't count. So I'm going to focus on artificial intelligence because just this week, there's been an explosion of things about artificial intelligence. 6 months ago, nobody talked. I talked about it a little bit, but it wasn't really talked about that much, let's be honest. And you're going to see some things tonight that I think are incredibly indicative of the, quote, ministry of the Antichrist and how that's coming and being set up, thinking that the Antichrist is the ultimate. He tries to fake people out. He tries to imitate Christ. You're going to, I know Chris Catalka was in the room with me. I don't know if he had the same reaction. I almost fell off my chair. You'll see the video clip tonight. And I've played some of these in my updates, so you'll see them again. But this acceleration, look at the growth in the Internet of Things, things that are to be connected to the Internet. So back in 2019, when I went to this technology seminar in San Francisco, the numbers are exploding. And we all carry the tracking device in our pocket. You know, I've got it here. Everybody knows where I am. They were tracking me. I had a little medical condition, nothing serious or anything like that, just a little infection. And I was talking to my doctor about it. And I picked up my phone in the doctor's office. Okay, what's going on? What are your symptoms? There are ads for treatment of that condition on my phone. Privacy is an illusion. But the Christian should know that relative to how God sees us, privacy has never been anything that we could expect. Once somebody told me we had a new sign-in system at our church. I don't want people tracking me. It's okay. You know, God's got a bigger database on you than Facebook Meta does. I live in Galena, Ohio, in New Albany, Ohio, now in Lancaster. Google's spending billions of dollars building server farms. There are Amazon server farms. There's Facebook server farm out there. It creeps me out. It's the mind of the beast sitting there almost in my backyard. And the buildings are 1,200 feet long. They're as long as the Empire State Building is tall. They're 2 million square feet each. They're refurbishing the ones that opened in 2019 because the technology is obsolete. Think about that. Google is building a new artificial intelligence center in Lancaster, Ohio, south of Columbus. Talk about that tonight. It's mind-blowing. And all of those are computer racks of computers that have your little tiny bits of information about your data. You don't have privacy anymore. You can try to go off grid. Just call me and tell me where you are, and you've blown it all. So there's this phrase that Hemingway talks about, that things happen gradually, then suddenly. It was in a book, and the two characters were talking. One goes, "Hey, how did you end up going into bankruptcy?" He says, "Well, two ways: suddenly, or gradually, then suddenly." That's the way this. And I'm not saying Hemingway is scripture, but the principle is there in scripture that these prophecies will be fulfilled gradually, then all of a sudden, suddenly. And they'll converge. They'll all be happening at the same time. And this is how things unfold. And there's a sense of expectancy. And here's a genealogy of Jesus Christ related to the first coming of Jesus. They had the genealogical records at the temple. They knew who Mary was. They knew who this was. The genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. He's born in the shadow of this palace that Herod built outside of Bethlehem called the Herodian. I've been there. There was a Temple Mount. Herod built several different places. He had that commemorated important events related to the Messiah, whether he knew it or not. One was the Temple Mount. And you can see here, this is a representation of the Temple Mount back in the day, at the time of the Second Temple period. And there's Golgotha. I don't think it's the Garden Tomb, by the way. I think it's the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, as disgusting and miserable and idolatrous as that place is. I think it's there. You can kind of see that this is sort of the same angle shot today. You see all of these structures. You can go. I went on a tour of the Western Wall tunnels when I was there in December. I'd never done it before in any trip to Israel. It blows your mind. It blows your mind what Herod built there. And yet there's these claims that, oh, the temple wasn't there. It was down in the city of David. By the way, I don't know if Chris was standing next to me. I asked one of the archaeologists down there, hey, was the temple down here in the city of David like some people claim? And he looked at me like I had a third head. Like, what are you talking about? Nobody thinks that. Well, they do in America. So there's all these structures that are there. Herod also built at Marquis Pl, the tomb of the patriarchs. I was privileged when I was there. The international spokesperson for the Jewish community of Hebron, one of the most divided city I've ever been in my life. It's just, the tension there is palpable. We were driving around, the soldiers were out, it was Shabbat was coming, and I was going over to this person's house Friday night for Shabbat, a Jewish rabbi. Let me say this. That experience, Shabbat in Efrat, the Jewish community of Efrat between Bethlehem and Hebron, was incredibly humbling. The father starts out and he goes and blesses each one of his children. They do this every Friday. We could learn a lot from this, folks. I'm just telling you. The mother then goes and blesses each of the children. Then the children and father go and bless the mother with using Proverbs 31. Thank you for making such a wonderful home. And then they start the meal, and there's prayers and that type of thing. And then the Torah portion that night was David being sold into slavery by his brothers. Joseph, excuse me. I was thinking David because he's also from Bethlehem. I have never seen an evangelical kid engage with the scripture like those kids. They were like 7, 9, and 15. And they all had biblical names. The tradition about Marquis Pl, too, by the way, you can find a video that Yishai Fleischer did with a Hebron expert, is that there were a couple other people who were very important that are buried in that cave under that structure. Their names are Adam and Eve, because that this was the outer boundary where they were not allowed to go any further, and that's why Abram wanted that cave. I don't know if it's true. That's the tradition. It is. Then you go up in Hebron a little bit further, and there's a place called Momar. And at Momar, you can stand there where that green circle is. We were privileged to go there with a friend named Joel Kramer, by the way. I don't have anything to sell back there. I've written a lot of things, but they're legal briefs, and trust me, you don't want to buy those. And I don't think my clients even wanted to read them. But Joel Kramer is an archaeologist. He lives in Jordan right now, but he does do tours in Israel, and I hope to set up a tour and maybe have Joel, or at least what I've learned from Joel. I don't think I'll get it done this year, but maybe next year, so I'll be making an announcement about that. This book, Where God Came Down, if you want to learn how to, here's the corny joke, dig biblical archaeology, get this book. This is part 1 of a series. It talks about Momar, this place. We stood there. He goes, what do you think that was, John? Well, it's round. It's a dry place. It's probably a cistern or a well. No. It's where the oak trees grew, one of the oak trees grew, and it broke through the bedrock. And the scripture says in Genesis 18, you can read it, Yahweh met Abram by the oaks of Mamre. And there he gave them the promise that he would have a line that would result eventually in the Messiah coming. Happened right on that spot. It's very difficult for Jews to go there today because it's in Hebron, in an area that they're not supposed to go to. It's a crime. It's a criminal that they cannot. There's also another meeting at Mamre where 3 angels came to speak to Abram and warn them about the coming judgment on Sodom. We know that 2 of them went on, but 1 didn't. Who was that? My opinion, angel of the Lord, the pre-incarnate Jesus Christ, showed up at that place. And so what you see is that all of these things, the archaeological evidence we have today, the prophecies that they had, the promises that they had, all of those were creating this incredible expectation. The Messiah is coming. And then Daniel nails it on the time. Here's another picture of Mamre. Aline Rittmeyer, I might refer to here in a moment, maybe not, is happening. So we had that. So we had the logistics. There were a lot of things that had to get put together for the first coming of the Messiah. We see that now when we see technology. You know, Ezekiel 38 talks about a great company, a mighty army, and it says they come up against Israel like what? Like a cloud. What does that mean? We don't know yet. So I'm going to just do a little informed speculation. I believe if this is the time, and I truly believe this is the time that we're getting close to, it's AI-controlled drone swarms. And you can go read the Jerusalem Post today. I'll refer to an article by my friend Jonathan Spire was in last night. Israel's in a very difficult spot. The people in charge of our government, who I lovingly refer to as the Biden administration, because I think the O indicates who might be running things. Biden can't run anything. Good grief. Can't remember his grandkids. When they had the U.S. Senate election in Ohio back in November, I got invited to a small panel on Fox News. You can find it on our Rumble channel. And so I got to make a couple comments. You don't get much time, when there's 12 other people. And there was 6 lefties and 6 conservatives like me. And I said, I think what I've seen is the destruction of energy production by the Biden administration. And Martha McCallum's eyebrows about busted all the makeup on her forehead when I said that, because she knew what I was talking about. And there's all these things. We talk about Babylon. And now what's happening is there's a big argument. Babylon's literal Babylon in Iraq. It's a system. It's somewhere. I don't know. I am open to all possibilities. I'm open to the scripture unfolding just the way the Lord wants to have it unfolded. And then we can say, this is that which was prophesied. But this is in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, effectively the king. His father is very frail, dying any day. And when he dies, you sort of hold on to your seat, get some popcorn, and keep reading the news. He's building this building called the Maraba. This is a video rendering of that. What do you see in this Maraba? First of all, what do you see the cube looking like? Well, the New Jerusalem picture. It's a golden cube. I read about that somewhere. Is somebody trying to imitate Christ? And then what's in the middle of it? A tower that looks like the Tower of Babel. I mean, this is just happening. He's also building this incredible city called Neom, and they're building it. You can go get the drone pictures of the construction that's going on right now. It's good. It's called The Line. It's about 100 miles long. It's 1,500 feet high. It's about 250 yards across, 250 meters across. But look at what the city looks like inside. Does it not bring to mind the hanging gardens of Babylon that Ezekiel and Daniel lived in when they were taken into captivity? I'm sure it's just a coincidence. Well, then maybe not, because I've also told that coincidence is not a Hebrew word. And so this city is fantastic. So we have all of these things that are going to happen. And they're going to happen. So God has these appointed times. You know, Daniel, seal it up. And at the end, the people who see all of this unfolding will understand and will be wise and will instruct many. And that's the practical application we should take away today, is that as we look to the first coming of Messiah, when it came time for Jesus to come on the scene, they were expecting it. And we know that the feasts were fulfilled and the first coming of Jesus, that these were the appointed times. And then you have these phrases throughout the New Testament related to things regarding the first coming of Messiah, like on Pentecost, which was one of the feasts that was fulfilled. I did a sermon on that about a week before last. If you want to go look at that. Make sure to give me time to go over again here today. And I'm not bitter about that. It happened at the appointed time. Do you understand that on Pentecost they were ready? That Pentecost, Jesus had just left, as Chris correctly pointed out, the Shekinah had gone away to his place. Tomorrow morning we'll talk about what does that mean? What is there any more significance about that in terms of time? I think there may be. I'm not dogmatic about it, but I think we should consider it. And I can tell you that talking to Bible prophecy teachers and authors and that type of thing, as I travel around, I'm telling you is people think something is going on, and this is the time. The exact days and all that stuff is how it works out. We don't know that yet. But Peter, the writer of Luke, stood up and said, "This is that which was spoken by the prophet Joel." We need to be ready in the spirit of grace and love. And I don't think it should be a one-off person. Okay, I think it needs to be 2 or 3 well-reasoned people. But we may live at the time where some people, pastors, stand up in their pulpits on a Sunday morning and say, what happened this week, this is that which was prophesied. And the question is, are we as the people, the remnant people of God, are we going to believe it? And if we do believe it, what are we going to do about it? Is it a call to action for us in our lives? And so they have these appointed times. And like I said, I talked about it because Pentecost, Pentecost was related to a place. The story of Ruth is read on Pentecost, the kinsman redeemer. I went to the ancient tell at Hebron just a few months ago. And what did I find there? The tomb of Jesse and Ruth. Tombs of Jesse and Ruth. Oh, no, the Ruth. And from there you can see over to the cave of Marquis Pl where the Abraham, the Sarah, the Jacob, or the Isaac, the Rebekah, the Jacob, the Leah are buried. There is no question that this is not where it happened. And now you have Jewish rabbis teaching their people about the significance of Hebron, the significance of Mamre, the significance of the Temple Mount, because there's an expectation building. There is something going on. And we see them looking for Messiah. And the problem is we know that there's a false Messiah coming. And so what do we have to do as the people of God? Warn them. I mean, you don't have to grab them and knock them to the ground and tell them. Well, you could do that, but, they, in Israel, they were all excited about the Abraham Accords. And I'm like, be careful with that. Why do you say that? Because it's a trap. Just be careful. And they were all aflutter and a Twitter about the Abraham Accords. So we know these things are coming. Let me just do two other little passages. So in Matthew chapter 1, it says, so all this was done that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the Lord through the prophet. Behold, the virgin shall be with child and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which is translated God with us. And we know that this comes, it's a direct quote from Isaiah. Now, I've thought about this a lot. As you have this prophecy of Isaiah, and then Matthew writes and says, this is that which was prophesied. Now, I've read Isaiah chapter 7. I know it. I'll be honest with you, I'm not getting it out of that. Okay, I'm just not getting it. And my question is, did they get it? Some of these prophecies are things that when they happen, you can look back and say, no, that's how it works out. Now we know. I mean, were rabbis running around because we had the prophecy of Daniel with the timing, where they had the genealogical records, the temple was still in existence. It hadn't been destroyed yet. Herod had made it more magnificent than it had ever been. But were they running around Judea saying, hey, you got any pregnant virgins from around Bethlehem? I don't think that happened. And that's another thing. So we need to be in the Word, studying the Word, going to and fro, back and forth through the book to understand the things that are coming on the world. Because I don't want to miss it if I'm here. I mean, I'm an old guy now, so I may not be here. But there will be a lot of people here. And we want them to know. And then this. So I'm driving to the airport with my friend after Shabbat dinner. Wonderful time with these new friends. And all of a sudden this verse pops into my head. So they said to him, in Bethlehem, Judea, for this written, but you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. And that's Micah 5. In Micah 5 it says, but you, Bethlehem, Ephratah. I just had dinner in Ephrat, right on the outskirts of Bethlehem. In the area where Ruth and all of this stuff happened. And it didn't even dawn on me till I'm like, oh, I was just in a pretty important place. Among people who aren't committed to the Messiah, although I think they have messianic expectations, but they're committed to Israel. And we know Israel's going through a tough time. Right now, those of us who love Israel, it's pretty messy over there. I have a quote I may share with you in my last talk here. We live at a time where, when Jesus got crucified, he wasn't very attractive either. But the disciples should still love him. I'm going to start off my talk tonight with a little bit about the road to Emmaus, which I think is significant because I think it happened not at this Emmaus over here, but it happened at Bethel. So I'll talk about that maybe 5 minutes, and then we'll talk about artificial intelligence. But my admonition is take all of this seriously because we live in an incredibly significant time. My father loved Bible prophecy. He died in 1991. And I remember 67 war. The guy was going crazy. I was 13. He talked about it for weeks. But you know what? He got the expectation part. He got the significance of it. In a little church in Middle Branch, Ohio, we have no excuse with the access to information that we have to not get it. The Lord is coming, the one from the Ancient of Days, the one who is from everlasting to everlasting. We need to get ready. God bless. Thank you.